The Raiders hit the road looking for a big win before the bye. Can they hand Joe Burrow and the Bengals their sixth loss of the season? FS1 analyst TJ Houshmandzadeh weighs in. And will the Raiders secondary come up big again in Cincy? SiriusXM's Solomon Wilcots is breaking down the DBs. Plus, NFL media's Rhett Lewis checks in on the Raiders' recent draft classes. The Silver and Black Show starts now. Welcome into the Silver and Black Show. I'm Amber Theoharis. The Raiders, they need to stop the bleeding before the bye. The Bengals are a beatable team with just 3 wins on the season. They're coming off that lopsided loss to the Eagles. Meanwhile, the Raiders just lost a 1-possession game to Patrick Mahomes and the undefeated Chiefs last week. So this team is fighting, and pulling out of the skid before the bye will certainly set the right tone for the second half of the season. And to talk about how they can do it, we welcome in a man who has worn both helmets, former Raider and Bengals receiver, and he is a current FS1 analyst, TJ Houshmandzadeh. TJ, so good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Amber. How are you?
I am doing great, and I love talking to somebody that has played for both teams. But these are 2 teams that need a win, right? They both have underperformed. The Bengals are 3-5. The Raiders are 2-6. What are you looking for in this matchup?
Man, you said the Raiders need to stop the bleeding. Both teams need to stop the bleeding. To be honest with you, to me, it's really crazy because if you could add the Bengals offense to the Raiders, Super Bowl contenders, or if you can add the Raiders defense to the Bengals, Super Bowl contenders.
You have a great team.
You have a great team. For me, it's more of, can the Bengals stop the run defensively? Can they stop the Raiders from running the ball? And offensively, will they be able to slow down that defense, specifically Max Crosby? Mm-hmm. I don't know if Orlando Brown will play. I'm going to guess and say no. And so they're going to have a plan to stop Crosby from taking over this game. And so it's going to be very interesting, but both teams need to win very badly.
What would you say are the biggest reasons, or is the biggest reason, for the Bengals only having 3 wins? This was a team people thought would compete with the Chiefs in the AFC for the championship.
I hate to single people out, but I'm an honest person, or single groups out. I would say, number one, offensively, they've been up and down. But the 2 best teams they've played have been the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. And offensively, they did more than enough to win that game. They did more than enough to win that game. I mean, you give them those 2 games, they're 5-3. They should have won those 2 games. The defense didn't do their part. And so when you have a team like the Chiefs, 4th and 6 team, they don't get it, game's over. You gotta find a way. You don't let a team convert 4th and 16, and you don't commit a penalty on 4th and 16. And so, you can harp on this and that. I just think defensively, they don't have the guys that they need. They sorely miss Jesse Bates. I will never get over the fact that you draft a guy in the 2nd round, you develop a guy, and you don't give him a second contract. That's like a badge of honor to draft and develop a guy and give him a second contract. Like, we're doing a really good job drafting, and they let a guy like him go. And so the defense is going to have to play better. It's as simple as that, because certain games the offense doesn't have it, and you have to keep them in the game.
You just said sometimes the offense doesn't have it. We all know, though, Joe Burrow, he can sling that thing when he wants to. And the Bengals do have a top 7 passing offense, but let's assume Orlando, Zeus Jr., I call him because I knew his daddy, Zeus Jr. is not going to play. How does the Raiders defense get after Joe Burrow? How's the pass protection been?
Honestly, you have to make sure that Max Crosby doesn't take over the game. So if you're Zach Taylor and picture the offensive coordinator, you have to make certain that we account for Max every time we're dropping back to throw the ball. I don't care if it's tight end chipping. I don't care if the running back is helping. If we're sliding protection, it does not matter. We cannot let Max Crosby take over the game. And if you do that, you got a chance. But it's not going to be easy. Now, I respect what AP and Marvin Lewis has done on that defensive side of the ball. Patrick Graham, I respect that. Jack Jones can play. I've been knowing that boy since he was a kid. Or let me say, I've been knowing that man since he was a kid. And so that secondary, the Raiders are really good defensively, but they're led by Crosby. You cannot let him take over the game. If he's having a good game, the Raiders are having a good game.
I'm glad you brought up Marvin Lewis. You played for Marvin Lewis. We don't know a lot about his approach as an assistant head coach to helping in Antonio Pierce's development. What do you think is his style, knowing him, when it comes to kind of knowing when to step in and that cadence without stepping on Antonio Pierce's toes, especially on the sidelines?
Oh, no. During the game, I don't believe there's no stepping on toes. The stepping on toes occurs during the week, the game planning, trying to see how we can attack protections. To me, that's the biggest thing in football is how can a defensive coordinator attack an offensive coordinator's protections to get pressure on the quarterback? I believe if there is any stepping on toes, that's where it takes place during the week. Sunday, if I got to step on your toes Sunday, we're doing something wrong.
That's a good point. I want to go back to what we were talking about with Joe Burrow, and you got to bring up Jamar Chase because he's the leading receiver in the NFL right now. We know that he can hurt you. Jacorian Bennett, though, the corner for the Raiders, has had a very good season. We do know the corners for the Raiders aren't exactly somebody that's going to go one-on-one, man-to-man, and shut down to Jamar Chase. How do they defend him?
I mean, honestly, it goes back to the guy I've been talking about this whole time. If Max Crosby can get pressure, they don't have to cover long. Mm-hmm. Jamar is a big, physical, fast dude. And the same reason I say that Orlando Brown may not play, T. Higgins may not play also. Mm-hmm. And so if T. Higgins don't play, if he doesn't play now, Yossi Vaz, he's going to have to play well. A guy who may be a wild card, and I'm sure the Raiders will pay attention to, is Jermaine Burton. The dude is big, he's explosive, he's fast. He could be the wild card for the Bengals if the Raiders aren't going to take him serious. And so that's a big boy that can run. But it all boils down to, it's very simple. If you can protect the quarterback, especially a quarterback like Joe Burrow, he's going to pick you apart. And if they can pressure him, then it's a different story.
I know you've been a mentor of sorts to Jermaine Burton, so it's good to know that Patrick Graham should be circling him as well. I want to go over to the Raiders offense. Antonio Pierce, he said earlier this week, this team is still searching for its identity. It's week 9, so that's not a great sign. But let's make you the Raiders offensive coordinator. So you're Luke Getsy, Houshmandzadeh. What should the identity be of the Raiders offense? They've been trying to run it. It's not working great at times.
And they're not able to run the ball with enough effectiveness to say, okay, we're going to be a run-first team. It's going to be very simple. I'm getting the ball in the two guys' hands. That's Brock Bowers, that's Jacoby Myers. Those are the two guys. See, it's not about your plays, Luke Getsy. It's about your players. And so every time I call a play, I anticipate the defense is going to play this coverage. So I'm going to call this play with the design on getting this guy the ball, which is Brock Bowers or Jacoby Myers. Every pass play, they are the number 1 and 2 options on every single pass play I call. And so to me, that's what it would be if I was an offensive coordinator. I'm getting the ball to my best players. It's never the plays. It's always the players. Brock Bowers is a big dude. He plays like a receiver, but he's built like a tight end. And so where you have that type of athleticism and size, you're a matchup problem.
TJ, it's so good to catch up with you. I can't wait to watch you over on FS1. Congrats on all that you're doing, and thanks for joining the show.
Amber, I appreciate you. Keep doing a great job.
Coming up, the Raiders defense is holding its own thanks to the emergence of key players in the secondary. But how will they match up with the league's top receiver, Jamar Chase, this week? SiriusXM's Solomon Wilcots answers the question next on the Silver and Black Show.
In 300 feet, turn left.
With Cox's fiber-powered internet, you can do brilliant things.
Exit approaching.
Like upload your voice to Dad's GPS in no time flat.
And I miss you, Daddy. Happy birthday.
Get multi-gig download speeds powered by fiber. Upgrade your internet today with Cox, the nation's fastest internet provider. Limited availability in select areas.
Some days are long, Taste is not an option. Taste is everything. 1800, the world's most awarded tequila.
The Silver and Black Show is brought to you by Cox, proud partner of the Las Vegas Raiders. 1800 Tequila, official partner of the Raiders. Taste is everything. Please drink responsibly. And by Allegiant, the official airline of the Raiders. Low fares, non-stop flights, only at Allegiant.com. Raiders.com is your home for all things Silver and Black, featuring exclusive interviews with players and coaches, breaking news, and daily content. Raiders.com keeps you up to date all season long. When the Raiders and Bengals square off in Week 9, it'll be a matchup of two teams looking to turn their seasons around. How can the Raiders leave Cincy with a win before the bye? It's a question we ask SiriusXM's Solomon Wilcots. He played a little safety for the Bengals, too. You remember him. But, Solly, it is good to see you. How are you?
Amber, I'm doing great, and also good to see you as well.
Well, I know every morning on SiriusXM, you have the opening drive. I hear you talk about all 32 teams, so I know you have strong opinions. Give us your take on the state of the Raiders heading into the bye and the midway point here.
I thought Antonio Pierce had the buy-in from the really good players on this team. As you remember, it was about this time last year where they all stood on the table for him, and that included the departing Devontae Adams and many of the other players. And then to find that, Adams wasn't all in this year, I think that kind of took away from this team. This week coming back to Cincinnati, it was supposed to be a homecoming for tight end Michael Mayer. And where is he on the non-football injury list? So it's just, really top players who are not available for whatever reason. Has to be kind of disappointing. And the quarterback play, I think, has been somewhat disappointing because you expect to get leadership and production there. I think they're going to start to hit their stride right about now. I do believe this team is going to gather itself after going through the adversity of the first half of the season. And so let's see what we get. I think they can be better at a number of different positions.
Well, you look what they did against arguably the best team in football, the Chiefs, last week. They lost a one-score game. They fought until the very end. They actually had a chance to win with all those goal-to-go opportunities that they didn't convert on. But what did you take away from that game as far as the effort and the fight?
I will say this, Antonio Pierce and the Raiders, this rivalry is real. It's alive and real. Look, you remember, you go back to the end of last season when they were able to get a win against the Kansas City Chiefs, went into Arrowhead Stadium, beat them. The defense was so dominant. They scored most of the touchdowns and did all the heavy lifting. And really now it's about having more complementary style of play where the offense has got to do a better job of protecting the football and not turning it over. You love to see the Raiders get back to leaning on their run game. And you love to see the defense begin to have greater balance. Max Crosby getting pressure, Jack Jones and the guys on the back end of that defense doing what they do. I still think this is a really good secondary who can be even better. But when they put it all together, the pass rush and their secondary, I think this defense is eventually going to be a very good one. Offense just has to stop turning it over. Right now, Gardner Minshew leads the league in turnovers, 11 in total. If he continues to play this way, that'll be like, 22 turnovers for the full season. And you and I both know you can't win a lot of games if your offense is turning it over at that rate.
Yeah, you can't do that. But you talk about some of the young players in the secondary, and you're a safety, so I know you take really close look at that position. This is a corner, though. Jacorian Bennett, he is tied for the lowest completion percentage allowed when the ball comes his way in the league. So he's having a really good season. But how do you begin to slow down Jamar Chase?
Look, there's no doubt you have to double him. It's not known whether or not if T. Higgins is going to be able to play in this game. And it's kind of like what the Eagles did when he was unable to play last week. They put a double team on Jamar Chase. Jamar is so good that he's going to beat your double team even. But you have to limit his impact on the game. And I think the Eagles were able to do that. In fact, when Joe Burrow threw into double coverage on a deep route, you saw they were able to tip the ball down and then they came away with an interception, but it was two defenders at the point of attack, even some 40 yards down the field. You have to pay attention to Jamar Chase. His 7 touchdowns lead all receivers right now around the National Football League. This guy will kill you, and he's going to beat your double team. He'll just crucify you if you try to cover him with just one defender, but you can minimize his impact on the game, and you have to force Joe Burrow to go elsewhere. And last week against the Eagles, that's exactly what they did. T. Higgins was not able to play, and so the other guys are going to have to come through. I will say this. If you are a defensive back for the Las Vegas Raiders, beware of Jermaine Burton. This guy is a rookie wide receiver who's waiting to kill any single-man defender. He is really good and very good down the field. He just has to be able to earn the trust of Joe Burrow, and I think he's waiting to have one of those breakout games here in the second half of the season.
That is interesting. You're the second person to come on this show and say that. TJ Houshmandzadeh came on before you and pointed that exact same name, Jermaine Burton, out as well. So Patrick Graham, I know he watches the Silver and Black show religiously. Patrick Graham's probably already very much well aware of him. You said you're going to have to double team Jamar Chase. Imagine, rolling their safety over. Trayvon Merrick has been really good. He got his second pick of the year last week against the Chiefs. But the Raiders still only have 4 total takeaways. So it's not just, you talk about Gardner Minshew turning the ball over. It's the turnover differential is horrendous because the defense isn't taking the ball away. As a defender, how do you begin to get better at ball hawking? How does a defense as a group work on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And really, I think it starts with your style of play. If you play a lot of man-to-man coverage, and particularly press man, your back is usually turned to the quarterback. And so you can have, even going back to the great Raider days, I grew up a Raider fan when Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes was sort of patrolling the back end. These guys are some of the greatest corners you've ever seen, particularly at press man-to-man. They were not going to get a high volume of interceptions. We all know that Lester Hayes, he led the league in interceptions one year and just was a pick machine. But typically when you're in a lot of man, the opportunities doesn't present itself as much. If you play off coverage man, or if you play some zone concepts, you can steal the ball with a higher volume than you can, say, in single man coverage. At the end of the day, you just have to really practice it every single day. You have to be very intentional. Guys, let's get our hands on the ball. You have to continue to coach it, preach it, and practice it.
Well, Sully, I know the Raiders are hoping to get their hands on the ball in Cincinnati. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Coming up, the Raiders certainly hit on Brock Bowers in the draft this year, but what other Raider draft picks are emerging in their second, third, and fourth years in the league? NFL Media's Rhett Lewis has the answer next.
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
Some days are long, some nights never end. I'm on the fleeting seconds flight, I pray to the coming wind. And timelines never stood around for me. I've loved every sky I've ever seen.
In 300 feet, turn left.
With Cox's fiber-powered internet, you can do brilliant things.
Exit approaching.
Like upload your voice to Dad's GPS in no time flat.
And I miss you, Daddy. Happy birthday.
Get multi-gig download speeds powered by fiber. Upgrade your internet today with Cox, the nation's fastest internet provider. Limited availability in select areas.
Welcome back. With so many injuries to key players, 2024 has been an opportunity for some of the Raiders' recent draft picks to step up. Our next guest has been tracking their progress, and we say hello to NFL Media's Rhett Lewis, who also, he's part of the Raiders family. You can catch him on Raiders.com. What's going on, Rhett? Happy Halloween. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too, Amber. And yeah, I do love this time of year because, not only do we get some sweet treats from time to time, but we get to check in on the progress of some of these younger players. And it is that point in the season as we close in on the halfway mark where you can kind of start to really judge some progress, and you're starting to see guys get some more reps and some more opportunities.
Yeah, you and I spoke for the draft special earlier this year during the draft coverage. Now that we do have that 8-game sample size to evaluate this particular rookie class, what are your thoughts?
Brock Bowers is the best player on offense right now. I don't think it takes, I don't think that comes as a big surprise, but what a pick that ended up being, right? It felt like maybe a luxury at the time, right? Because you had Michael Mayer, you were hoping for big things here as he gets a little bit more experience. But now, when Mayer's been out, and Bowers is there, he's able to, have such a big target share from whoever's playing quarterback that it gives you a sense of comfortability there. I mean, that dude just comes, his target to reception share, is one of the best in football right now. So love what Brock Bowers is doing. Love that Jackson Powers-Johnson is starting to get, into the game and kind of firm up a spot along the offensive line there. One of the other younger names that I'm really excited about seeing, continue to come along this year is Trey Tucker, right? Who was a rookie a year ago. So excited to see, him kind of be a part of that explosive play quotient that needs to go up for the Raiders, especially, in the pass game. And so I'm excited about a bunch of these guys, but those are just a few that kind of hit the mark for me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens after the bye. Antonio Pierce already said that they were working on some packages for Desmond Ridder, and to see that connection, that Cincinnati connection again with Trey Tucker, will be interesting to see if we can see that. But let's go back to Brock Bowers. Everybody knew he was a beast who watched him at Georgia, but he is the top tight end in the NFL right now as far as the number of receiving yards. I don't think anybody could have predicted that, especially in a league with Travis Kelce and George Kittle and things like that. But what do you think specifically allowed him to transition so easily to the NFL from Georgia, based on what you saw from Georgia?
Yeah, versatility is skill set, right? It's just, he's not just like a wide tight end. He's not like just a receiving tight end. He's not, just an H-back type of guy. He's literally all of it. And the fact that he can line up in so many different spots for this Raiders offense and still find success, whether it's, settling down, in zone coverage somewhere and finding an open spot, or it's beating, one-on-one man coverage, or sometimes more than one guy trying to get a piece of him as he's coming off the line, or, just trying to figure out, defenses are obviously going to continue to pay more and more attention to what he's doing. So I think it's just his ability to find the open spot, present himself as available to his quarterback, and then go make tough catches, go make contested catches, and then find ways to make plays with the ball in his hands. That was one of the things that we really loved about him, was the way that he kind of turns into a running back with the ball in his hands. And so that's why you want to target him. That's why you want to get him the football, because he's got the ability to break tackles and move the chains in a big way. Yeah, yards after catch, that's for sure, because of the physicality. You mentioned Jackson Powers-Johnson, who, of course, was the second-round pick. There's also DJ Glaze out of Maryland, who's gotten an opportunity to start and be a part of this offense. What have you seen from both of them as far as a learning curve? I know JPJ is getting the chance to play at center with Andre James not healthy. Yeah, and I think that's kind of natural for him. Obviously, he was one of the best centers in football a year ago for the Oregon Ducks. So I think that's something to continue to watch there. And then, DJ Glaze, is a guy who had, was more refined in pass pro coming out of Maryland than maybe in the run game, considering the way that Maryland liked to attack with Talia Tagovailoa as their quarterback. I want to see those guys. I want to see them find a unit that can present some continuity in the run game, right? I mean, 33 rushing yards. I get it. Kansas City is one of the best defenses in football, but that's just not going to get it done. That's not winning football. And, if you throw in a better complement on the ground to the way that Gardner Minshew played last week, that's winning football, right? I mean, like, he was fantastic. And if the Raiders don't turn the ball over and find a way to limit penalties, I think, you found a way, you found a formula there to compete each and every week and find yourself in a position to win. And I think, Jackson Powers-Johnson, DJ Glades, and really that whole crew along the offensive line, if they can find some continuity, right, and a way to feel like they're more connected, especially in the run game, I think that only expands the margin for error a little bit for this team. As it sits right now, it's pretty thin.
When we look at the past couple of draft classes, I want to jump back to the Raiders' 2021 draft class. Now in their fourth year, they really seem to be coming into their own. Mike Mayock that year, he grabbed Trayvon Merrick, Malcolm Kuntz, Devon Diablo, and Nate Hobbs. What have you seen from those guys, and how important are they for the future of the defense with the Raiders?
Well, you're talking about a couple of guys who have the potential to be foundational, right? Trayvon Merrick, certainly in the secondary. And then obviously it's unfortunate that Malcolm Kuntz, went down with the injury. I think he was really coming on this past year into this season. And then obviously the injury is a tough way, to kind of see that end up this year for him was really proving to be a nice asset opposite Max Crosby and in some of those pass rushing situations. But Devon Diablo is a fun guy to watch, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's got some of that athleticism that he brings to the linebacking core to kind of pair up with the toughness that you see from Robert Spillane. I feel like that, when Spillane's been healthy, that's been a really good combination with those two guys out there. So look, you're talking about a player really at each level of the defense that you feel like you can build with, right? And so when you start to have those foundational players, and believe me, nobody's more of a cornerstone than Max Crosby is, but to have those guys around him that are capable of making plays on the defensive side of the ball from all three levels, that's when you start winning. That's when you start winning on a consistent level, when you have that competitive depth built up at multiple spots on your defense. So those guys, Amber, that's a great note that you pointed out there with the way that they've ended up playing.
The past draft, we all sat there. It was a bizarre draft. I'm not going to lie. Out there, Michael Penix to, as you said, Brock Bowers going to 13. It was very bizarre. And one of the things that was strange to me as I was sitting there at the draft was watching the corner depth just kind of get pushed into the second round, right? Yeah. You're thinking, wow, I mean, these are first round corners. They're getting pushed down. The Raiders didn't take a corner until DeCamerion Richardson in the fourth round. They could have gotten in on some of that, but they didn't. It gave Jacorian Bennett the chance to emerge here in his second year. Clearly, Tom Telesco knew something I didn't. That's why he is the GM. What have you seen as far as Jacorian's development?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge for this team, right? Because, Meek Robertson ends up leaving, and then you have JB could step up into a bigger role there. I mean, that's to do with a ton of speed, obviously, that we saw at the combine. And now you're starting to see, with Hobbs and Bennett and Merrick, you're starting to see, a group kind of come together and build with one another, which I think is really important, especially when you're able to have those guys, out there together, on a consistent basis. And, Bennett's a dude. I don't know that he's like, one of those guys that you're going to send and travel with opposing number one wide receivers just yet. But I think he gives some peace of mind over there on the defensive side of the ball that, hey, look, we come in and, we've got a team that has a couple of different options. Like, we feel good over there with what Jacorian Bennett's been able to do. So I think just kind of growing up together with some of those guys in the secondary has obviously been very beneficial, especially with Hobbs and his ability in the slot too. Like, that's a very difficult position to have. And when you can have somebody that feels like a starter at that spot, it's a major value.
Well, they'll definitely be tested against Jamar Chase coming up this Sunday. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell, he's on IR. Gardner Minshew leads the NFL in total turnovers, and now Desmond Ridder was just signed off the Cardinals practice squad. Raider fans are very confused about the future. What can you tell Raider fans about the future of this position for the Silver and Black? Especially, we have to be real. You've got to look towards the draft coming up.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. And this is not nearly as strong a quarterback draft as last year's was when we had 6 guys go in the first 12 picks. I don't know that you're going to see, something like that this year or even close to that this year. So look, I think it's all going to come down to, position and value. But I mean, what I could tell you is like what you saw from Gardner Minshew this past week, like that's winning football. Problem is you just haven't seen that consistently week in and week out. And it's hard to find wins when you're not quite sure what that position is ultimately going to produce. But I think he's done a nice job, for what he's been asked to do. And so if he can continue down that road, I think he'll continue to have a spot here. The issue is, where are you looking at the quarterback spot? Like, Quinn Ewers from Texas is a guy that, obviously gets a lot of conversation there. But I mean, like because this quarterback class is maybe not as deep as the last one, if you're not in the top 5, you're probably not getting a guy that you can expect to come in, and contribute right away as a rookie, the way that Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels have done this year for their respective teams. So I think it's really going to come down to this pre-draft process, where the Raiders end up this year. Obviously still a lot to fight for this season. And I know Antonio Pierce and that group are going to continue to do that. So and look, the more that Gardner Minshew plays winning football, the less opportunity you're going to have, to find one of those elite talents at the top of the draft class. And that's okay too, because you can find guys that can contribute at that position beyond the first round. We've seen it. Dak Prescott with the Cowboys, obviously Brock Purdy with the 49ers. You just got to find a fit. And that's really what you've kind of noticed over the last few years. Like, look at Sam Darnold. Was not a fit in New York. Maybe wasn't ready for it. Was not a fit in Carolina, but is a terrific fit in Minnesota. And I think that's something to watch too this year, right? The reclamation projects at quarterback. And I know, Raider fans,
they're everywhere.
Yeah. Baker Mayfield. Yeah. And so I get it. And I get Raiders fans maybe trepidation with that. It's like, whoa, we've tried that before with Jimmy Garoppolo. We've tried that before with Gardner Minshew. But I think with the right fit, right, and you continue to upgrade the protection around him, the playmakers around him, because those 2 Ps right there are so big for a quarterback's ultimate production. I think you can find ways to get competent quarterback play outside of, let's say, a top 10 draft pick.
Rhett, it is always fun to talk a little ball with you. If you dressed up this Halloween as a highly intelligent, articulate draft analyst, you nailed the costume. You did great.
Okay.
Looks great.
That's fantastic.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Rhett. We
Anytime,
appreciate
Amber.
it. All right, coming up, a very simple way for the Raiders offense to get back on track. It's One Last Thing next.
Taste is not an option. Taste is everything. 1800, the world's most awarded tequila.
Some days are long, some nights never end. I'm on the fleeting seconds flight. I pray to the coming wind. And time like snow never stood around for me. I love every sky
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
Celebrate 65 seasons of Raiders football. Be a part of our legacy with a special edition brick featuring the exclusive 65th anniversary logo. Get your brick installed at Allegiant Stadium along with a replica for your home or office. Order now and support the Raiders Foundation. benefiting military and veterans, wellness initiatives, and youth development. Secure your place in Raiders history today at RaidersFoundationBricks.com. The Silver and Black Show has been brought to you by Cox, proud partner of the Las Vegas Raiders. Ticketmaster, the official ticket marketplace of the Las Vegas Raiders and the NFL. And by Allegiant, the official airline of the Raiders. Low fares, non-stop flights, only at Allegiant.com.
Love the kid. He's probably a field, when you talk about safe picks in the top 10, how can you miss on this guy? There's zero bust factor here. Brock Bowers going to have a heck of an NFL career.
Deep down the middle of the field. Bowers jump on the 35, and he takes off down the sideline. 15, 10, touchdown Raiders!
Brock Bowers is the guy. I keep saying that over and over again from this. He is the guy.
Time now for one last thing. The Bengals are 0-4 at home this year, and if the Raiders are going to make it 0-5, they need to throw the ball to their best players in the end zone. I know, it's a groundbreaking concept. Remember this? Bowers, that's him, mossing one of the best corners in the NFL last week in Trent McDuffie. He is bigger than every defensive back in the NFL, and he can do that same thing in the end zone.
He's a young man that's capable of a lot of things, and I think what makes him so dynamic, though, is that he plays the position in the complete sense. He can play in line, he can get off the rock, he can block, he can do pass protection, he can run routes out of it, he can run from the backfield, you can widen them out and he can run them. So from that sense, I think that versatility, same thing we were talking about with Jacoby, that's what makes it so dynamic, right?
I'm glad he brought up Jacoby. What about Jacoby Myers? He's another playmaker. Look what happened in the first quarter last week when Minshew threw him the ball. Guess where? In the end zone.
Chiefs in the nickel, Madison the back, second down goal. Minshew, here they come up the middle to the end zone, caught for a touchdown. Grabbed by Myers. Working on Justin Reed. Good looking drive by Las Vegas.
It works. Touchdown, back shoulder fade. It is week 9, and Antonio Pierce says this team is still searching for its offensive identity. He's maintained they want to run the ball, but the run game isn't working. Take a look at this. Right now, the Raiders only average 79 rushing yards per game. That's second to last in the NFL. And against the Chiefs, when they had 8 goal line opportunities starting inside the 4-yard line, they couldn't punch it in despite running the ball 4 different times.
Want to run the football, want to be physical up front and win the line of scrimmage. That didn't happen last night. We got knocked back in critical moments. Not all the time, but in critical moments, especially when we're down there in the goal line. And then just really execution, just overall from the team, from the coaching staff, everybody.
The bigger question from that game is why on earth did Brock Bowers go nearly 40 minutes of a 60-minute game against the Chiefs without seeing a single target? That actually happened. And in that same game, Jacoby Myers didn't see a target for the last 23 minutes. He disappeared. This Sunday, the formula is simple. Feed your best players consistently, especially in the end zone. That'll do it for us. It's Raiders Bengals this Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific. Have a great weekend, everyone.